In Whiteville, North Carolina, a town with a population of just over 5,000 people, the Civil War still seems to be fresh on the minds of many. The town has a history of stories of the Civil War. In 1865, residents reported hearing the siege of Fort Fisher. That same year, William Sherman, a Union general, and his army allegedly passed through Whiteville, causing tales of looting and destruction to be handed down for generations. The location and history clearly proves that they are on the side of the Confederates. But you think that Whiteville's time of loyalty to the seceded states ended years ago as the country went through an extensive period of Reconstruction, right? However, as soon as the North became tired of dealing with the South's unruliness and removed the troops and officials that were stationed there, the Southern states degenerated into the era of Jim Crow that would last until the rise of the Civil Rights Movement. It was during this period that the former Confederate states, among many others, began to twist the story of the Civil War into something other than a war over slavery. Instead, explanations like the Lost Cause came to light, which idolized the Confederacy and its veterans because they fought for justice and freedom. People began to be taught about how the War of Northern Aggression was forced upon the South and how they were fighting for their way of life and the rights of states. It was these ideas that were spread by organizations like the Sons of Confederate Veterans that was founded in 1896. The Sons of Confederate Veterans continues to be a prominent organization that promotes the ideology of the Lost Cause narrative and has funded the construction of many Confederate memorials in the United States. The organization's statement of purpose is as follows: We, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, having been commissioned by the Confederate veterans themselves, retain a responsibility and right to adhere to the founding principles of the United States of America, remembering the bravery, defending the honor, and protecting the memory of our beloved Confederate veterans, which includes the memorials, images, symbols, monuments, and grave sites for ourselves and future generations. End quote. Now, in a time where Confederate memorials are vandalized and taken down by an ever-growing movement against them, the Sons of Confederate Veterans have a lot of work cut out for themselves. However, in 2005, the SCV actually funded and placed a memorial in the small town of Whiteville. How does this monument compare to the ideas of the Lost Cause and what actually happened during the Civil War? Now, the monument itself is situated in a small graveyard in town. It was placed there to commemorate the Confederate soldiers who were buried there. Many of these graves are unmarked, with only a few marked with a small stone saying Unknown CSA 1861 to 1865. The Confederate Memorial Obelisk is located in this area as a marker for all the known and unknown soldiers buried there. The reasons for why it was put up make some sort of sense, as all people should have some sort of grave to commemorate their lives. However, in cases like this, the people should not be idolized for what they did, but instead placed into the context of their society. This is especially the case for a monument that's put up 140 years after the war ended and the men died. Instead, the monument says this: Whom power could not corrupt, whom death could not terrify, whom defeat could not dishonor, lest we forget, lest we forget. On the left side it says, This monument is dedicated to the nearly 1,300 courageous sons of Columbus County, who in 1861, in obedience to the summons of their state, freely offered their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor in behalf of the cause of constitutional liberty and self-government, and through 4 years of war so bore themselves in victory and defeat before the world, and set an example of exalted and unselfish patriotism which will ever be an unfailing inspiration to all generations. On the right side it says, Interred in this hollow ground lie 38 known Confederate veterans and numerous unidentified Confederate veterans, known but to God. It is with eternal gratitude we dedicate this monument as an everlasting tribute to their bravery and honor. This monument is clearly pro-Confederacy. However, it is also stuck in the vision of the Lost Cause. Nowhere in this monument does it mention the institution of slavery, that states like Mississippi declared as the sole reason for their secession. Instead, it reveres the actions of brave and honorable men who fought for the liberty and self government of the Confederate States. Ignoring the importance of slavery was something that supporters of the Confederacy began doing during Reconstruction in order to prevent further reform that supported the rights of African Americans in society. Now, groups like the Sons of Confederate Veterans, which funded and designed this monument, do it to protect their Southern heritage. On its website, the SCV says that the citizen soldiers who fought for the Confederacy personified the best qualities of America. The preservation of liberty and freedom was the motivating factor in the South's decision to fight in the Second American Revolution. The tenacity with which Confederate soldiers fought underscored their belief in the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. These attributes are the underpinning of our democratic society and represent the foundation on which this nation was built. End quote. They wish to memorialize their ancestors in a way that frames them in the best light possible, and the Lost Cause narrative provides that for them. This is why the group continues to fund the preservation of these monuments to the Confederacy, and why they pledge their protection to them. Until they are all either taken down, fixed to promote the correct history of the Civil War, or put into the context of their time, Confederate monuments that promote ideologies like the Lost Cause will continue to be a danger to society because of the intentionally deceiving message that they give off.